You are listening to the Health and Wellness Connection podcast, the #1 wellness podcast designed to provide the latest information to help you achieve your health and wellness goals. Our show features exciting guests, the latest in medical research, and in-depth discussions in current trends on weight loss, nutrition, and fitness. No matter what your interest, the Health and Wellness podcast has you covered. And now, presenting your illustrious host, Dr. Barry, MD. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Health and Wellness Connection. This is your host, Dr. B here. Thank you for joining us to what I hope will be a very entertaining and informative episode. So we got some pretty cool stuff we're going to talk about today, but obviously before we get to that, we're going to just do the quick activities to pay the bills. Again, I'm your host, Dr. B here, a board-certified emergency medicine physician, as well as a health and wellness physician, and we focus on bringing health and wellness topics to you directly from the source, meaning that we source articles and research before we present the topics to make sure the information is informative and accurate. So either way, I just want to thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about a nice array of topics, so definitely want to stay tuned for that. If you want to reach out to the show, reach out to us at drbarryhealth@gmail.com. You can also follow the show on Instagram at drbarrymd, as well as TikTok, Dr. Barry Wellness 1. All right, so today's interesting show, we'll have some pretty interesting topics, but it's going to definitely really bleed into the social economic aspect of the country as well, just given all the different effects it's having on the economy as far as some of these wellness drugs and so forth. And of course, the main culprit are these GLP-1s. I know we've been talking about these drugs for a minute on the show, many years actually at this point. But now we're starting to see some effects of these medications on society as a whole. You know, it seems like people are eating a whole lot less as these medications rise in popularity. And as a result, many industries are crumbling. And this is kind of shows how some of these medications and behavioral changes can really have a monumental effect on society as a whole. I'm sure you guys who are in the United States have seen a lot of stories about, you know, large fast food chains going out of business, multiple locations shutting down due to quote unquote the bad economy. And that's definitely playing a role. There's a lot of issues with the economy right now in America. There's a war going on. Gas prices are through the roof. People are having trouble keeping and maintaining jobs. Corporations are firing people left and right. So it's definitely been very difficult for a lot of people to, have a lot of money due to all the issues coming up with, getting a job, keeping a job, as well as prices of everything's going up. So it's just kind of a tough time right now. And as a result, people are eating out less. And for that reason, people are not going to fast food, especially now that fast food prices are approaching regular restaurant prices. And kind of, really shows that, things are really hitting the fan for a lot of folks in the United States. But either way, a lot of restaurants are closing. And many people believe that in addition to the bad economy, there's actually a lot of decreased demand due to people being on weight loss drugs, specifically GLP-1s like Wegovy and Ozempic. This is interesting because there's millions of dollars being lost. One thing rich people don't like is losing money. So you hear story after story, for instance, Popeyes closing down 30 restaurants. This is a fried chicken restaurant. That's one of the things that almost guaranteed to make money for folks to open up such an establishment because people love fried chicken. Now, of course, all groups love fried chicken. People like to postpone it to only certain groups, but fried chicken is consumed by everybody all across the country. Now, as a result, there's been many fried chicken restaurants that have been thriving. KFC, Popeyes are, of course, some of the biggest, the most popular ones. Now you see them shutting down as people who own these restaurants are unable to sell enough chicken to keep the doors open. So it just shows that, some of the most, foods that people eat constantly, for better or for worse. And of course, we see that's kind of worse because we know that fried chicken and other greasy, high calorie foods can lead to a lot of chronic health issues. So again, when GLP-1s did not exist, people were eating these regularly, causing increased calorie consumption, causing obesity and the like. Now we all know that cooking at home is always the best option, but people a lot of times, don't have a lot of time due to excessive work demands. social stressors, or people just not knowing how to cook. I mean, cooking has become considered uncool amongst the youth for many years now, and that's resulted in people eating out more and not really being responsible for what they create to put in their bodies. So either way, as a result, people are eating out less, and now you have restaurants shutting down. These are big popular restaurants. TGI Fridays is another one, closing down multiple locations. Fleming's Steakhouse, Prime Steakhouse. Now Fleming's is a pretty nice establishment. So that one, I think, maybe more, due to the economic issues as opposed to people not liking steak. Because one thing that you do know is that folks who are on these weight loss drugs tend to eat more meat due to the higher calorie content, and it helps with appetite suppression. So the thing, steakhouses are just probably going to take a hit because they're just pretty costly. But ultimately, it's clear that things are changing in America due to people's behavioral habits. And and it's interesting how, another thing that came across my timeline was even farmers are complaining now due to the lack of product that they're selling due to all the decreased demand, specifically potato farmers. Now, you know me, guys, I've been talking about French fries being poison for for years. French fries, high calorie, tend to be, a really hidden source of calories for many people because they think that small, it's, quick and easy to eat, that it doesn't really cause a lot of calorie consumption. But French fries, especially fried French fries, can be some of the highest calorie meal you can consume in a given day. People don't even realize if you have a burger and fries, even if it's a double pounder, double meat burger, and a side of fries, 9 times out of 10, the fries will have more calories than the burger. And the calories in the fries are just simple carbohydrates, just almost like eating sugar or eating cake. So it's just a very, bad source of calories because they're not extremely nutritious. They do have a decent amount of fiber, but the calorie content is just way too high to justify the consumption. So I've always been telling people to not eat fries or really minimize your consumption of those fries. And I guess people are, taking heed to that advice because potato farmers have been going bankrupt lately. They're shutting down, they're burning up their excess potatoes that aren't being sold, all because of markedly decreased demand for potatoes and potato chips and other different similar foods. And this is going on globally. So, potatoes historically were a food of famine. Back in the day, people ate them because they had nothing else to eat because they were a good source of calories, right? But, ultimately, if you're eating potatoes regularly or eating them combined with other foods, they're going to be consistently the highest calories of your meal. So you got to be careful how you consume them because, again, they are fairly, they're roots. They're designed to be in the ground, providing nutrition to large, foliage. So if you just go straight to the source and eating all the nutrients over, some French fries and some ketchup, you're definitely going to be consuming more calories than you probably need. So either way, potatoes and the different foods are going down. So I just wanted to just kind of express how these GLP-1 drugs are having a real effect on the economy. Even I saw an article the other day where alcohol companies are not selling a lot of alcohol. And then people were saying that, it's part of people switching to different substances like cannabis. But I do think GLP-1 usage has also affected the industry because one thing about GLP-1s, it reduces addiction. We're going to talk about that as well. How we've talked about it before as well, how GLP-1 drugs can help reduce cravings, reduce alcohol consumption, reduce psychiatric, breakdowns. So I think people are not drinking as much due to the GLP-1s as well, causing alcohol companies to complain about lack of sales and increased stressors. So it just shows that, these new drugs and these new medications are really having a profound impact. And we're going to see more effects on society with these medications and other advances as we, learn more about our bodies and learn more about health and wellness. All right, so that's enough about GLP-1. Let's talk about another topic that I thought was pretty interesting. It talks about one of my favorite countries, Japan. Japan, because they have an excellent culture, in my opinion. Now, of course, they're not perfect. They have a lot of issues there as well, so I'm not saying it's without fault. But one thing I do like about Japanese culture is that they have a very nice and measured approach to food. There's a new traditional kind of concept that's getting more popularity here in the West, but it's been around for a long time in Japanese society. And that's the concept, of Hara Hachibu. Hara Hachibu is the concept of learning to eat 80% full. So you're not trying to get to the belly busting, end result many people in America do when they go out to eat, at least prior to GLP-1 usage anyway. But, eating to your, belly's packed and completely, about to explode, that gut busting, fullness there. That's kind of what had been happening for a while, but we realize now that, it's kind of not healthy. And as we see the end result, obesity, diabetes, heart attacks, and the like. But for a long time in Japanese society, the concept of Hara Hachibu has been something that many people have followed. And now scientists are believing that this is not really new, but this concept may be a great way to keep your body in shape and also train your body to not overeat. One thing about the body that it can quickly adapt to how you move in society, how you move in the environment. For instance, if you're going to restaurants and constantly overeating and packing your stomach with food, eventually your body will say, you know what? This person likes to eat a lot, so maybe we should start expanding our stomach size so we can hold more food. Not to say that, it's a good thing, because the body's going to respond. In the same way, the opposite is true. If you're eating less and you're not, really expanding your stomach at all, and your stomach is really contracted, it's going to actually contract and get tighter. So it actually will adjust to how much food you're putting in it regularly. This is why many people believe eating smaller meals is better, because your stomach stays tight. So it won't be quick. It'll be quick to trigger those satiety hormones that happens when you eat a lot in your stomach. It stretches. The stretching of the stomach, of the lining of your stomach, secretes hormones that makes you actually full. That's the concept. But again, this is not always effective with some people. Some people can bypass this signal and they can just keep eating until they turn, into a big donut. But ultimately, there's supposed to be a mechanism that helps control how much your stomach is full. So now this whole, back to the Hara Hachibu, keeping, your stomach about 80% full will actually help your body regulate the content of what you're eating, and actually help you reduce, your cravings, because if your stomach is used to being only a certain size, it'll be quick to trigger those hormones when there is some increase. And it's actually, I think, a pretty, important and effective strategy to help you kind of reduce overeating. Overeating is always the biggest component of, weight gain and obesity. And learning how to, treat that is one of the biggest things I think also GLP-1s do as well, because if you're eating less, you're getting this natural ability of eating a lot less. Your stomach stays smaller and you tend to get full quicker, even when you're off the injection. Now, of course, this has been up for debate, but ultimately trying the 80% eating can really have a similar effect to taking a shot. But again, it takes you to train your body to being used to eat, smaller meals, and slowing down and savoring the food, as well as, not eating to a point of discomfort. Doing that is always a bad idea. There's nothing wrong with taking food home or eating it later and reducing the kind of, reducing the amount of food you're consuming in one sitting. So Hara Hachibu, everybody. Hara Hachibu. Okay, so let's talk about sleep. Sleep is something that, we talk about as well on this show, but it doesn't get a lot of love because, again, there's no big companies paying people to do research on sleep, unfortunately. But there are some good souls out here looking at the body and how it functions in sleep and why it's important. And at the University of California in Berkeley, there's been a new data set or a study that had come out, and they saw that sleep is far more than just rest for the body. It actually does a lot of things that help, the body function properly, including controlling growth hormone release, fueling muscle and bone strength, fueling your metabolism and helping keeping that maintained, and even mental performance. So they've actually now mapped the neurons, the brain circuits that are actually involved in these processes, just going that there's further proof that sleep is really critical for normal functioning and overall health and wellness, guys. So you need to be getting your sleep. And we talk about this a lot on the show. Sleeping should be between 6 to 8 hours a day or within a 24-hour period. And again, anything less than 6 hours ideally is considered unhealthy or potentially dangerous. Can actually, not sleeping can raise your inflammatory rates, can make you sicker, more prone to illness, and just kind of make you just unwell. So just try to get that rest, critical for normal, healthy individuals. So anyway, so what they did at the University of California was that they mapped the brain and they studied people, as they slept, as well as, they monitored hormones in the blood by drawing blood and checking growth levels during sleep and so forth. And so what they found was that those people who were sleeping regularly, they were able to monitor growth hormone levels in the areas that they were being secreted from and seeing kind of the effect on the body. And what they found was that, the growth hormones were being secreted in people who were sleeping well, getting those stimulations in different parts of the brain. And they were seeing that, this was critical for normal brain function and brain health, because those circuits and triggers that were being activated during sleep were making people function better, and their brains were functioning at a higher level. So it just shows that the lack of sleep has many, terrible effects, including increasing your stress, increasing your, weakens your immune system, just, affects your metabolism negatively. So, here, this study looked at growth hormone specifically and showed that how it was so important in sleeping and how its functions were enhanced during a good sleep. This is why people who sleep a lot, are going to be better as far as stress maintenance. They're going to be probably growing taller, be more kind of, able to, handle stress and handle, adversity. So get your sleep, guys. It really improves your overall functionality in multiple different levels. All right, so a new study that looked at over 10,000 patients has shown that simple therapies can beat drugs for knee arthritis pain. People usually, when they think about arthritis, they think about joint pain, inflammation, and that's what it is essentially. But one thing that has been done historically is that when people have this condition, they just focus on pain meds. And pain meds, we do know, are extremely dangerous in their own right. Drug overdose through opiates is one of the biggest killers of people in America. And, pain meds, while important, can have a high risk of being abused and have an extremely high and risky side effect profile, including death. So using less, narcotics, especially, as well as even anti-inflammatories, they also feel a lot of risk. Both those meds can be difficult and can be risky. So using non-medication methods to help reduce pain has been critical. This is actually one thing that people who advocate for cannabis swear to, that, with cannabis users, they are having decreased, pain requirements, therefore reduce their use of opiates and other drugs. However, there's a new study that showed that treatments like knee braces, hydrotherapy, exercise are extremely effective in easing osteoarthritis symptoms. And they can not only reduce pain, but they can also increase mobility when these things are employed. And, this is actually a big deal because, I think the first treatment has always been take this pill, sit down somewhere, you'll be fine. But we realize that with side effects and all the addiction profiles we're seeing with these pills, that focusing on non-drug treatment is going to be better for long-term, outcome and higher quality of life, as well as, improve health and wellness. So this study looked at 139 different clinical trials, right, involving about 10,000 patients. And they looked at different studies that employ different therapies like laser therapy, electrical stimulation, knee braces, and so forth. And what they found was that they looked at all the different results from people who had underwent these different therapies. And they found that people who used just simple knee braces had the highest result as far as pain reduction, improved joint function, and easing stiffness. So a simple brace, guys, can do wonders. If you sprain your knee, tweak something, simply just immobilizing it on a brace, allowing the body's natural, hormones and inflammatory mediators to work and reduce the damage, can be the most effective way in treating kind of inflammation and pain. Now, for those who, say they've tried a bracing method, it didn't really work well, simply exercising was also shown to have consistent benefits, especially hydrotherapy, meaning doing exercise in the water. So if you're arthritic, get in the water, do some leg raises, knee raises, things like that. Those things were extremely effective in reducing pain and reducing discomfort in those joints that were extremely painful during the active inflammation. So ultimately, I think the key is that pain meds are definitely overused in Western society, and using things that are not necessarily pill related, like exercise, bracing, immobilization, can be very effective for pain relief. So that's something that hopefully those who suffer from arthritis or joint issues should consider next time they have a flare up. All right, guys. So the next study talks about it's not really new, but another drug that's now getting more attention. This is usually pushed as a natural drug, and it's called kratom. Now, kratom is a drug that's actually derived from plants, and it's actually been popular in different countries, especially Asia, but they've been bringing it here to the United States, and you see a lot in these different plant shops and different head shops, if you will. And it's being pushed as a stress medication, something to take for anxiety. Ultimately, on a molecular level and a biological level, it's like basically a mild opiate. So people who use kratom, they say that it improves stress, it reduces pain, it reduces anxiety. But ultimately, on a molecular level, it actually has a very similar effect that opiates do it, which means that they actually can be, in the same way as dangerous opiates, because they can cause overdoses similar to opiates. And you can also have withdrawal from people if you use it extensively. And it's something that I think has to be very, very careful, because again, it's sold as a natural product, but again, because something is natural doesn't mean that it's harmless. Most pharmaceuticals are derived from natural products, even though they're modified and heavily altered. But natural products are usually the source of everything, literally, that we consume. That being said, kratom is now, being blamed for being a rapid reason for hospitalizations and deaths due to kratom overdoses and kratom poisoning. It was believed in 2025 there was about 3,434 cases of kratom poisoning. Just compare that to 258 10 years ago, 10 years prior, 2015. So it shows that, kratom is getting more popular. You're seeing it more commonplace in different, gas stations. You see it in, beauty salons. You see it everywhere at this point. But ultimately, it is not without risk. Because it's promoted as something as quote unquote natural doesn't mean that it's harmless. And ultimately, people who are using kratom have to be aware of the potential issues. And again, it is from Southeast Asia, the evergreen plant. So people say it's a plant based, so it has to be harmless. No, plants produce poisons all the time as well. And if not taken carefully, can really cause some issues. And like I said, because of its mild opiate effect, it can cause an addiction, meaning that if you don't use it, you're going to feel terrible. You're going to feel agitated, creating this kind of dependence. You have to be very careful, guys. Kratom is not something that's not without risk. Natural or not, it can definitely cause problems. And you can overdose on it as well. So I honestly tell people not to mess with it. I think that if you're having severe anxiety, you should probably see a professional and get true kind of medicines designed for these conditions that aren't as dangerous. And yeah, ultimately, be careful, guys. Kratom poisons are going up and you could easily be a victim. So just stay woke. Okay, guys, just a few minutes, Just a few minutes is all you need so you can live longer. New study is coming out, guys, from the European Society of Cardiology. And it showed that just a few minutes of getting out of breath each day could dramatically cut your risk of major diseases, including heart disease, dementia, and diabetes. And this is kind of crazy. Only 8 minutes is what they found. And I like how they like to try to make it as basic as possible just so people can get out their couch and do something instead of just sitting around. But at the end of the day, whatever works, let's go for it. If 8 minutes is what they're going to promote, let's go for it. I think you should probably do at least 30. Just walk for 30 minutes for crying out loud. I mean, this is why I think obesity is such a big deal, because in a lot of different countries, you have to walk to the damn grocery store. There's no you can't Uber something to your house. You can't just, jump in your car and run somewhere, because some countries, gas is $10 a gallon thanks to this war. So you can't just get in your car and run around and just, burn energy and, destroy the carbon footprint. Let me stop. But ultimately, things are very convenient. So it's very easy to sit in your house and literally do nothing and be getting all your resources sent to you. So now, because these things are so convenient, we have to kind of create these campaigns to get people to get up and move around to, live longer. And so either way, this study showed that just a few minutes of vigorous physical activity each day can significantly lower your chance of developing heart disease. This is again from the European Heart Journal. Now what they did, they looked at data from about 96,000 people, and they have their biobanks and they have their kind of data sets where they have patients and their, overall comorbidities, what kind of conditions they have, how active are they. And they looked at, the risk of disease development over time. And they found that by looking at this, this data, they found that physical activity, or those who reported physical activity, I guess, in their profile, they found that those who had engaged in physical activity had a markedly reduced risk of chronic disease and premature death. And that's something we know, but we love seeing all this data because it just verifies all the things we've been saying, guys. Being active, right? Just going for a walk, 15-minute walk a day can literally save your life. It sounds so silly, but people sometimes can't even get that much in because they're, again, jumping in the car, go to sit down somewhere, they get up, go another way, sit down. They also are consuming a lot of calories in the meantime. Before we know it, obesity hits. So just being active, guys, can reduce so much issues. It can save you money, because if you get diabetes, you're going to be spending a lot of money buying pills, going to doctor's appointments, and the like. So if you like to keep your money in your pocket, eat right, and you'll be shocked. You'll be actually saving money. You won't have to buy 20 pills a month. And, pharmaceuticals are already rich as heck. So if you want to keep them from getting all your bread, you want to eat healthy and be a little more active so that you can, avoid the 20 different medications and paying thousands per month when that money can go to a vacation or something. So I can't stress this enough, guys. Regular activity is critical. Only 8 minutes, the latest article is saying. So at least do that. But I think at least 15 to 20 minutes a day is something you should strive for. And that can be done pretty quickly, honestly, if you're just, focused and just sneak off and do your lunch break and walk around for 20 minutes. And that's it. I mean, things like that can really be, extremely beneficial for the long term. So I can't stress this enough. Just a few minutes can save your life. All right, guys. So let's talk about another hormone that's getting a lot of popularity. Mount Sinai Hospital has talked about one hormone that's overlooked historically anyway, but not as much lately anyway. But historically, this hormone has been overlooked, and it's been found that this hormone known as cortisol, is linked to stress and was found in 27% of those patients that had high uncontrolled blood pressure. So cortisol, guys, is historically a stress hormone. And it's so funny because nowadays some of these new influencers, one that comes to mind is a kid they call Clavicular. And he's been pretty popular on social media, and he really talks about cortisol. He really talks about how anything that stresses him out is a cortisol spike. And it sounds funny, but as a science geek like myself, it's kind of hilarious because that's actually very true. If you're stressed out, cortisol is one of the first hormones that spike in your blood. And historically, we've always associated cortisol with increased stress, and it can, definitely cause inflammation. And it's overall a bad thing if your cortisol levels are very high, because it means you're in a constant state of inflammation, which I have already explained can result in multiple medical issues, including stroke, heart attack, and the like. And now we know cortisol is linked to blood pressure and high blood pressure. And we all know that when you're stressed out, your blood pressure spikes, you get real worked up, and that cortisol may be one of the key hormones that are involved in that blood pressure spike and, issues that are resulted from that. So, the kids these days, they use cortisol spike as like a way to make fun of someone who's causing them stress. Like, oh my God, he or she's just a cortisol spike. We try to avoid them. And it's kind of nerdy, but it's actually pretty funny. So I actually like it. But ultimately, historically, cortisol's effect on the body has been ignored, but that's kind of changing now with these new slangs and terms by these influencers. But either way, this study showed that people who had very, very high blood pressure resistant to medications were actually suffering from excessive cortisol levels, and this was due to various conditions. Some people actually had hormone conditions where they were secreting excess cortisol. Others were actually, believed to be in very stressful, anxious situations where cortisol levels are chronically elevated. And also, overall, the condition is known as hypercortisolism, where the body just produces too much cortisol. And this is really bad because cortisol levels, when they're very high, can be very deadly in the long term. And people with high, blood pressure that's resistant tend to have high levels of heart failure, stroke, and different issues. So this is really crazy, because ultimately cortisol, has really been ignored, honestly, as far as it has been ignored, but it hasn't really been focused as far as healthcare professionals, as far as managing cortisol, making sure it's at a reduced, level. And so ultimately, I think the focus on cortisol and stress reducing. People always say when they come to the ER, and when I'm working, they'll say, okay, I had this, my head hurts, I feel stressed, my chest hurts, I can't breathe, and something's wrong, please figure it out. And I'll do the workup and assess them and everything. And ultimately, things will come back normal, and I'll say, what, everything looks good tonight. I think you're fine. I don't see any acute issues. I think you're probably just stressed. And when I say that, they'll say, I'm just stressed. It can't be just stressed. I'm like, listen, stress kills. If you don't know it now. People who are stressed out are the ones who are having heart attacks or having strokes typically. Stress is extremely dangerous and needs to be taken very seriously. If you're stressed out, you literally are a ticking time bomb for some disaster that could happen just internally. Your body does not deal with stress at all. This is why, again, if you believe in the Bible, when God created folks, he put them in the Garden of Eden. You know that y'all need to be relaxed, enjoying nature. It wasn't some stressful situation. Now, of course, things change, either way. But ultimately, stress is bad. You don't want stress in your life. You want to reduce as much as you can. And, a cortisol spike is something you don't want. And this study just proves it, guys. So blood pressure, if you're someone who has high blood pressure all the time and your meds aren't working, tell your doctor to maybe get a cortisol level and see how that looks. And if there is an issue there, that can be a part of the reason why, you're having issues. So stay stress-free is all I can say. Thanks. All right. So the next study talks about dreams, vivid dreams, guys. If you're someone who dreams, scientists are now believing that this may be the way to get to get a deeper, more restful sleep. sleeping has been one of the things that a lot of people have difficulty really achieving. Insomnia is one of the most chronic conditions in America or in the world, for instance, especially with the different work schedules, people with iPads and the cell phones and the constant internet access. People aren't sleeping as much as they used to. And it's believed that this lack of sleep, as we talked about previously, affecting different metabolic functions, affecting your mental health. And now we see that, people who are not dreaming are probably not getting a good true night's sleep that we really need to have normal functionality. And so it was believed that, before, that when you were sleeping and when you were like in a deep sleep, your kind of brain was kind of switched off and you weren't really doing much. But ultimately it was found that, once we get to, our deep sleep and our REM sleep, there's actually is a lot of complex activity going on in the brain, which we just saw in the previous study. It was linked to some hormone levels and hormone secretion. But we now see that it's also helped with the brain circuitry functioning properly and being primed for optimal functionality when you are awake. So, those who had, deep sleeps though, and deep vivid dreams during sleep, were found that the people who dreamt were actually having better, longer sleeps versus the kind of waking up throughout the night. People who had a nice vivid dream they slept deeper, they slept longer. So we know that that's actually ideal for getting that good restful sleep. So, ultimately dreams are, I think they're a very important part of mental health. Now, people want to use dreams and to kind of interpret the future. That's where I think you're getting too far. But ultimately, dreams are just kind of a series of conscious thoughts and concepts that maybe your body is trying to process and even trying to create kind of things and create. People have dreamt ideas, dreamt of all kinds of songs and creating, art. So I think dreams definitely have a place as far as understanding the brains, and that's something that we still haven't figured out yet as a scientific community. But now we're seeing that when you dream, your brain is truly in a kind of a deep kind of restful mode, and we know that restful mode for the brain is great for brain health. So I think ultimately more research needs to be done on dreams and how they actually are helping with the brain health, and hopefully we get more data as we process. But ultimately, dreaming is good, deep sleep is good. Dream big, dream more, dream longer. Anyway, so that's all for tonight's show. We have, just want to say thanks for everyone listening. We have some pretty cool stuff coming up. We got some good guests. Actually, we're doing a good guest spot tomorrow. We're going to definitely do some more interesting topics here next few days. A lot of good media, actually, to be honest. And we're going to try to tie more political stuff in here too, just because I think there's been a direct effect on the politics due to scientific changes. But either way, that's all for today's show. I'm your host, Dr. B. Thanks for joining us for the Health at Once Connection. We will be back with more exciting info and more exciting data in a future episode. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Health and Wellness Connection podcast and radio show. For more information on ways to get healthy, please check us out. www.anchor.fm/HW Connection. Here you can re-listen to the show, check out older shows, and even further support the show by becoming a subscriber to the podcast. Please check us out today. Again, that's anchor.fm/HW Connection. And also, don't forget to follow Dr. Barry on Instagram at drbarrymd. Until next time, stay healthy.